The paper crackled in the mountain wind before I even reached my front porch. Notice of HOA foreclosure sale. The words were printed in thick black letters across bright yellow paper, stapled straight through the cedar trim my grandfather had installed with his own hands nearly 40 years ago. The staple had split the weathered wood just enough to expose fresh pine beneath the faded stain. For a second I just stood there. The only sounds were the slow creak of the porch swing drifting in the breeze and the distant rush of water somewhere below the ridge. Pine sap mixed with the smell of damp earth after last night's rain. It should have smelled like home. Instead, it smelled like someone had broken into my family's history. I pulled the notice free carefully instead of ripping it down. Whoever had posted it wanted me angry. I preferred evidence. The pages were still crisp, which meant they hadn't been there long. Certified copies. Court formatting. Recorded lien number. Auction date only 23 days away. According to the paperwork, my cabin had accumulated years of unpaid HOA assessments, penalties, attorney fees, administrative costs, and interest. The total demanded came to just over $48,000. Failure to satisfy the lien would result in foreclosure. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because there wasn't any other sound my body knew how to make. My grandfather bought this cabin before the subdivision even existed. Long before anyone dreamed of matching mailboxes, golf cart patrols, or neighborhood committees that acted like they owned the mountains. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and dropped my backpack onto the old oak table. Everything looked exactly the way I'd left it 3 months earlier. The cast iron stove, the faded wool blanket folded over Grandpa's rocking chair, the framed topographic survey hanging beside the fireplace. That survey had been there since I was 12 years old. Grandpa used to point at the black boundary lines with one rough finger and tell me, "Land doesn't remember politicians. It remembers measurements." Back then I thought he was talking like an old farmer. Years later, after a career reading engineering drawings, legal site plans, and survey coordinates almost every day, I finally understood what he meant. I spread the foreclosure packet across the table. My eyes moved automatically through the legal description. Parcel number, subdivision reference, recording information. Then one line made me stop. I leaned closer. Read it again. Read it a third time. Something felt wrong. Not dramatic. Not obvious. Just off. I stood and crossed to the fireplace, lifting the framed survey from its hook. The paper inside had yellowed with age, but every boundary coordinate remained perfectly legible. I laid it beside the foreclosure notice. The property description matched. Mostly. The parcel dimensions matched. The bearings matched. The easement reference looked familiar, but one line didn't. The foreclosure paperwork identified the lien as having been recorded in Redstone County. My grandfather's original survey, and every set of plans I'd ever reviewed for this property, identified the cabin inside Black Ridge County. I frowned. Maybe I was remembering wrong. County lines in the mountains sometimes wandered in strange ways. Still, something about it refused to settle. A truck door slammed outside. I looked through the front window. A white luxury SUV had stopped beside the community bulletin board near the subdivision entrance below my driveway. A woman stepped out wearing an expensive hiking jacket that had probably never seen actual dirt. Even from this distance, I recognized Diane Whitmore. She spoke with another couple while pointing toward my cabin. Then she handed them a glossy flyer. The man looked up toward my porch. So did the woman. Prospective buyers. They weren't sightseeing. They were already looking at what they believed would soon belong to someone else. Diane smiled. Confident. Relaxed. Like everything had already been decided. She had no idea I was standing inside the cabin watching her. She also had no idea that one quiet line buried in her foreclosure paperwork had just refused to make sense. I slipped every page back into its envelope instead of throwing it away. If this was going to become a fight, I wanted every fingerprint, every staple hole, every date exactly where she'd left it. Outside, another vehicle climbed the mountain road toward the cabin. The auction wasn't weeks away anymore. It had already begun. The SUV disappeared down the mountain road before I even reached my truck, but the knot in my stomach stayed exactly where it was. I drove straight to the subdivision entrance instead of chasing Diane. The wooden community bulletin board stood beside the stone monument sign that proudly announced Pine Hollow Ridge Estates, its polished bronze letters catching the afternoon sun. 3 flyers were pinned under the glass. One advertised the summer picnic. Another announced pool maintenance. The third carried a photograph of my cabin. Auction preview. My home had become weekend entertainment. I unlocked the glass case with the small maintenance key I'd been given years ago when the management company mistakenly listed my cabin on the neighborhood contact roster. Back then, I'd assumed it was harmless bookkeeping. The subdivision snowplows occasionally cleared the access road near my driveway, and someone suggested paying annual road maintenance dues would simplify everything. I never joined the HOA. I paid the road invoices because I used the road. Apparently, someone had stopped remembering the difference. I photographed every flyer before removing nothing. Evidence first, opinions later. As I stepped back, an older couple wandered over carrying hiking poles. "You must be the owner," the man said cautiously. "I am." He shifted awkwardly. "The listing says the association already controls the property." I looked at the brochure in his hand. It wasn't advertising a foreclosure auction. It described the cabin as an upcoming community asset redevelopment opportunity. Those weren't the words banks used. Those were the words boards used. "I'd be careful believing everything you read," I said. The woman smiled apologetically. The HOA president seemed very confident. Of course she did. Confidence costs nothing when you're spending someone else's property. By the time I reached the management office 15 minutes later, the receptionist already knew my name. "I can't discuss active collections." "I'm not asking about collections." She hesitated. "I'm asking why my cabin is being marketed before anyone owns it." Her fingers froze above the keyboard. "I don't actually see auction marketing in our system." I slid one of the brochures across the counter. Her expression changed immediately. "That's not one of ours." "So who printed it?" She looked toward the hallway leading to the board offices. I really shouldn't say, which usually means she already had. After another long pause, she lowered her voice. "President Whitmore has been handling this file personally." Personally. That single word bothered me more than the foreclosure notice itself. Organizations make mistakes. Individuals protect them. Back in my truck, I spread every document across the passenger seat again. Foreclosure notice. Auction brochure. Annual road invoices I'd found in my glove compartment. The oldest receipts dated back almost 8 years. Every payment clearly described road maintenance. None mentioned membership dues. None referenced HOA assessments. Yet somehow my cabin had transformed from a neighboring property using a private access agreement into an HOA lot scheduled for foreclosure. I called my sister Megan before driving away. She answered on the second ring. "Please tell me you're fishing instead of working." "I wish." I explained everything. She went quiet. Finally, she said, "When you were working in Montana, I remember getting one letter from the management company asking whether you'd like to receive HOA newsletters. I never saw that. I checked, send informational mail only. I figured newsletters couldn't hurt." Neither of us spoke for several seconds. One harmless administrative response. Years of road payments. A management office that couldn't explain its own brochures. A board president running the file herself. Tiny assumptions stacking on top of each other like loose stones on a mountainside. Individually harmless. Together dangerous. As I started the engine, my phone buzzed with a new email. The subject line read, "Mandatory property inspection, compliance access authorized." I hadn't given anyone permission to enter my land. But one detail inside the attached notice stopped me cold. The inspection order listed my cabin's street address correctly. The parcel number looked familiar. The county listed beneath it did not. I didn't drive back to the cabin. I drove to the Black Ridge County Recorder's office. The building sat in the middle of the county seat, an old brick courthouse annex that smelled faintly of floor polish, dust, and aging paper. The place had the quiet rhythm of people who spent their lives filing other people's history one page at a time. Exactly the kind of place where mistakes either disappeared forever or stayed preserved in ink. I walked to the public records terminal and typed in my parcel number exactly as it appeared on the inspection notice. No results. I tried my grandfather's name. The cabin appeared immediately. Warranty deed. Transfer to family trust. Probate distribution. Access easement. Everything I expected. No HOA lien. No foreclosure filing. No notice of default. Nothing. I leaned back. Either someone had failed to record a foreclosure, which would be astonishing, or they had recorded it somewhere this office couldn't even see. A clerk noticed me staring at the screen. "You finding what you need?" "I'm trying to locate a recorded HOA lien." She stepped beside me, reading over my shoulder. If it's against this parcel, it'd be here. It isn't. She frowned. Maybe you're using the wrong parcel number. I handed her the inspection notice. She looked from the paper to the monitor, then back again. Huh. What? This parcel number belongs here. She tapped the notice. But that county reference doesn't. My heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up. Calm was useful. Excitement made people careless. Could someone accidentally enter another county? She shrugged. People can type anything. Would it still become part of this record? No. She shook her head. Recording happens where the property sits. Not proof. Not yet. Just another piece refusing to fit. I thanked her and stepped outside. Instead of driving away, I unfolded Grandpa's original survey across my truck hood. The afternoon breeze tried lifting the corners. I held them down with my phone, truck keys, and the foreclosure packet. Survey bearings. Boundary monuments. Section numbers. Everything aligned perfectly with the deed. Then I opened the county GIS map on my tablet. Colored parcel outlines spread across the mountainside. The subdivision appeared in pale yellow. My cabin sat beside it. Not inside it. Beside it. I zoomed farther. Road easement. Creek crossing. Ridgeline. Then another colored boundary appeared. County line. It ran less than half a mile east of my property. Close enough to confuse someone relying only on digital maps. Not close enough to move an entire cabin. I took screenshots. Downloaded the parcel layers. Saved offline copies. 3 separate backups. Years of engineering projects had taught me one lesson above all else. Digital information has a strange habit of changing after lawyers get involved. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. Mr. Caldwell? Yes. This is Kyle with Summit Property Services, the management company. I'm calling as a courtesy. Tomorrow's compliance inspection is still scheduled. I never authorized an inspection. A pause. Our records indicate board authorization. My property isn't governed by your board. Another pause. Longer this time. I can't discuss jurisdiction, but you're willing to enter private land. I'm simply following instructions. Instructions. Not law. Not ownership. Instructions. Before hanging up, he added one sentence that stayed with me. You may want to remove any personal property before the inventory. Inventory. They weren't talking like people collecting unpaid dues anymore. They were talking like people who believe they already own the cabin. I drove back before sunset. Fresh tire tracks crossed my gravel driveway. Not construction trucks. SUVs. 2 different sets. The porch looked untouched until I reached the front steps. A small fluorescent orange sticker had been placed beside yesterday's foreclosure notice. Not nailed. Not taped. Carefully stuck to the cedar post. Property inspection, route verified. Someone had already visited. Without permission. I photographed the sticker before touching it. Then I noticed something even stranger. Pressed into the damp soil beneath the porch was a bright pink survey ribbon. The cheap plastic kind crews tie to temporary boundary stakes. I followed it with my eyes toward the tree line. Another ribbon fluttered 50 yards away. Then another. Someone wasn't marking inspection points. They were marking a property boundary. The only question left was whose boundary they thought they were following. I barely slept that night. Every hour the porch lights swept across those pink survey ribbons outside my bedroom window, glowing like tiny warning flags every time the wind caught them. Whoever had walked my property hadn't bothered to hide what they were doing. That told me they believed they didn't have to. At sunrise, I started documenting everything. Wide photographs, close-ups, GPS timestamps, measurements from the cabin foundation to each ribbon. Then I drove steel landscape stakes beside every ribbon without disturbing the originals. Bright blue for mine, pink for theirs. If someone removed the pink markers later, I'd still have proof exactly where they'd been. Around 9 o'clock, the first pickup truck arrived. Then another. Both carried magnetic signs reading Summit Property Services. A man in a reflective vest stepped out carrying a clipboard. Morning, he called politely enough. We're here for the scheduled compliance inspection. I declined it. Our authorization comes from the association. It doesn't come from me. He glanced at the paperwork, then toward the cabin. I'm just doing my job. I understand. I kept my voice calm. But you're standing on private property. The crew exchanged uncomfortable looks. None of them appeared eager for an argument. The supervisor finally nodded. We'll notify the board. As the trucks pulled away, I noticed one employee quietly photographing my blue survey stakes before climbing into the passenger seat. Interesting. They were documenting me too. An hour later, my email exploded. Violation notice. Failure to cooperate with authorized inspection. Fine, $500. Second notice. Interference with association survey activity. Additional fine. Third notice. Unauthorized placement of property markers. Every document arrived within 12 minutes. Somebody had been waiting for that inspection to fail. By noon, the neighborhood Facebook page had become its own courtroom. Owner refuses safety inspection. Possible abandoned property. Board protecting community values. One post claimed I'd threatened contractors with arrest. Another said I'd been hiding environmental violations on the mountain. None of it was true. Truth wasn't moving nearly as fast as the rumors. I took screenshots of every post before anyone could delete them. Then I called Megan. "They're trying to make you look dangerous," she said after reading through the comments. "I know. You should answer." "No." Silence. Then she sighed. "You think they're baiting you. I think they want one emotional response they can attach to every court filing after this." She knew me well enough not to argue. Instead, she asked the practical question. "What do you need?" "Scan Grandpa's estate binder." The whole thing. The whole thing. By late afternoon, another envelope arrived by overnight courier. Inside was a notice scheduling a special HOA board meeting for 48 hours later. Agenda Item 1. Authorization for protective management of abandoned improvements. I read that sentence twice. Protective management. Interesting phrase. Not demolition. Not maintenance. Management. As though the cabin had already passed into someone else's hands. I drove to the management office one more time. The receptionist who'd spoken with me yesterday wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I've been instructed not to discuss your file." By Diane. She hesitated just long enough to answer the question without speaking. As I turned to leave, she quietly slid a business card across the counter beneath a stack of brochures. No words. Just the card. Rachel Monroe. Real estate litigation. Someone inside the office was frightened enough to help, but not enough to be seen helping. I slipped the card into my wallet without looking at it again. Outside, fresh orange barricades blocked the small gravel pull-off where I usually parked before walking the last 100 yards to the cabin. A temporary sign stood beside them. Access restricted by board order. Authorized personnel only. They hadn't blocked my front door. Not yet. They had blocked the easiest public access to it. I walked around the barricades, following the old footpath my grandfather used long before the road existed. Halfway up the trail, I looked back. 2 SUVs sat near the barricades. One belonged to Summit Property Services. The other belonged to Diane Whitmore. She wasn't watching the road anymore. She was watching my cabin. And for the first time since this started, I realized this wasn't just about collecting money or enforcing rules. Someone was positioning the property as though my ownership had already become an inconvenience they intended to erase. The board meeting lasted exactly 18 minutes. I know because I stood outside the clubhouse doors the entire time, listening to muffled voices through thick glass while the smell of fresh-cut grass drifted across the parking lot. Every few minutes I caught a familiar word. Delinquent. Foreclosure. Community liability. Then came the sound that bothered me most. Applause. The doors opened, and Diane Whitmore walked out first with the same polished smile she'd worn at the bulletin board 2 days earlier. She carried a slim leather binder tucked under one arm, like someone leaving a successful business presentation instead of discussing another person's home. "Ethan," she said pleasantly, "you should have attended." I wasn't allowed. Homeowners in good standing were. She let that sentence hang in the air before walking toward her SUV. No shouting. No threats. She didn't need them anymore. By the time I reached my cabin, the first practical consequence had already arrived. A heavy steel chain stretched across the gravel spur leading to my parking area. A bright white sign hung from it. Property under HOA management. Unauthorized vehicles subject to removal. My truck sat on the wrong side of the barrier. Everything I needed for the weekend, tools, groceries, generator fuel, was locked 100 yards away. I cut the engine and just listened. Whined through the pines. A raven somewhere above the ridge. The chain rattling softly against its new steel posts. Brand new posts. Concrete still damp around the bases. They hadn't improvised this. Someone had planned it. I walked the remaining distance carrying only my camera backpack. The front porch looked untouched until I reached the door. Another notice. This one informed me that protective management, had officially begun pending foreclosure completion. The language had changed again. Yesterday, they wanted inspections. Today, they claimed management authority. Tomorrow, I didn't want to guess. Inside, nothing appeared stolen, but everything had been disturbed. Kitchen drawers stood slightly open. Closet doors no longer latched. The framed survey Grandpa loved sat 3 inches farther left on the fireplace mantel. Most people would never notice. I noticed because I'd hung it after his funeral. I photographed every room before touching anything. Then I checked the attic crawlspace where Grandpa had always hidden family documents. Empty. My stomach tightened. Not because important papers were gone. Because I'd moved every original document to a safe deposit box 6 years earlier after a wildfire scare. Whoever searched the cabin hadn't known that. They'd been looking hard. By sunset, my phone lit up with another notification. The HOA had uploaded photographs from the morning's board action. There was my cabin. There was the chain. There was a caption beneath the image. Association assumes stewardship of neglected structure pending lawful transfer. Hundreds of reactions. Dozens of comments praising the board for protecting property values. People congratulated Diane for saving the neighborhood from an abandoned eyesore. My grandfather's home had become a public relations campaign. I wanted to answer every lie. Instead, I downloaded every photograph exactly as posted. Original timestamps mattered. Edited screenshots didn't. Just after dark, Megan called. They're saying you surrendered the property. I know. You need a lawyer. I have a name. Then stop trying to solve this alone. She was right. For the first time since this started, I admitted it. Engineering drawings could explain where a boundary belonged. They couldn't stop someone determined to erase it. I packed the camera, the foreclosure notices, every road maintenance receipt, and the inspection orders into waterproof document sleeves. Nothing stayed in the cabin overnight anymore. As I locked the front door, my flashlight swept across the new chain one last time. Something reflected beneath the nearest steel post. I crouched. Fresh concrete had squeezed around the base during installation, leaving a perfect rectangular imprint from the contractor's stake plate. Stamped into the wet surface were tiny raised letters from the rental form. Project reference, Parcel 18B. I pulled the folded inspection notice from my pocket. My cabin wasn't listed as Parcel 18B. Not even close. For the first time since they'd taken control of my access, the chain stopped looking like a victory. It looked like someone had built permanent improvements using the identity of a different property. The words Parcel 18B stayed in my head all the way down the mountain. Not because I knew what they meant, because I knew what they didn't. They didn't belong to my cabin. By 8 the next morning, I was back inside the Black Ridge County Recorder's office with a notebook full of photographs and the inspection notice folded neatly beside Grandpa's survey. I started with my own parcel. Nothing had changed since yesterday. Then I searched for Parcel 18B. This time the computer responded immediately. Different owner. Different legal description. Different acreage. Different tax district. I leaned closer. Parcel 18B wasn't even on my side of the ridge. It belonged to a vacant lot nearly a mile away inside Pine Hollow Ridge Estates. The same subdivision Diane controlled. I printed the parcel summary. Then another. Then the GIS overlay showing both properties. The clerk who had helped me yesterday recognized me. Back again. I found something. She studied the maps spread across the counter. Those aren't the same parcel. I know. She traced one finger along the property boundaries. They're not even adjacent. No. She looked toward the hallway before lowering her voice. If someone built improvements under the wrong parcel reference. She stopped herself. I probably shouldn't speculate. You don't have to. I photographed the computer screen instead of relying only on the printouts. Then I purchased certified copies. Paper fails. Digital files disappear. Certified records tend to survive arguments. Back outside, I opened the county GIS on my tablet again. One window showed my grandfather's original survey. Another displayed the parcel layers. A third held the photographs I'd taken of the chain posts. Blue survey stakes. Pink survey ribbons. Project reference. Parcel 18B. Wrong county. Wrong parcel. Same people. Separate mistakes. One pattern. The phone rang. Rachel Monroe. The receptionist must have passed my message overnight. I reviewed the documents you emailed. You think I'm crazy? I think someone has mixed administrative records with legal authority. That wasn't quite an answer. It happens. It happens. She paused. What matters is whether they relied on those mistakes after someone should have recognized them. I told her about the chain. the survey ribbons, the inspection notices, the parcel numbers stamped into the concrete. She didn't interrupt once. Finally, she asked a single question. Did you preserve everything before anyone could change it? I photographed every stage. Good. Another pause. Don't argue with them anymore. I wasn't planning to. I know. Her voice stayed calm. That's exactly why I agreed to meet. By lunchtime, Megan had scanned every page from Grandpa's estate binder. The files arrived in chronological order. Original deed, inheritance documents, road easement agreement. Then one letter I'd completely forgotten. 21 years old. Typed on county letterhead. The county engineer had approved improvements to the shared access road, while specifically stating that maintenance participation did not alter ownership or association jurisdiction. I read that sentence 3 times. Road payments, easement, newsletter request, GIS confusion. Everything I'd thought were unrelated annoyances suddenly lined up like survey markers across a field. Not proof of everything. Proof that assumptions had been building for years. I copied every digital file onto 2 encrypted drives. One stayed with me. The other went into the safe deposit box beside Grandpa's original documents. Nothing important remained in only one place anymore. Late that afternoon, I drove past the cabin without stopping. The chain was still there. The pink ribbons still fluttered. Diane's SUV sat beside the barricade while she spoke confidently with 2 contractors carrying rolled construction plans. She laughed at something one of them said. She never looked toward the tree line where I had parked. As far as she knew, I was still reacting, still frustrated, still one step behind. I let her keep believing that. An hour later, I walked into Rachel Monroe's office, carrying one waterproof document case. She didn't reach for it immediately. Instead, she slid a legal pad across the table. Start at the beginning, she said. I placed the certified county records on top. Then, without saying another word, I handed her the photograph of the concrete stamp reading Parcel 18B. For the first time since this began, someone besides me looked at the evidence before hearing the story. Rachel didn't open a law book. She opened my photographs. One by one, she spread them across her conference table with the precision of someone assembling a puzzle she'd solved 100 times before. The foreclosure notice, the pink survey ribbons, the chain across my parking area, the concrete stamp reading Parcel 18B, the certified parcel maps, Grandpa's original survey. She never asked me what I thought they meant. She asked only one question. Can you prove these photographs were taken before anyone altered the site? I slid my camera onto the table. The originals are still on the memory card. GPS coordinates embedded. Timestamps untouched. She nodded once. Good. She inserted the card into a write-protected reader connected to her office computer. No editing. No copying to the desktop first. She created a forensic image directly onto an external drive, while another assistant documented every step in writing. Watching them work reminded me of engineering inspections after bridge failures. Nobody argued. Nobody guessed. Every fact had to survive cross-examination. When the transfer finished, Rachel finally looked up. They're moving too fast. I noticed. No. She tapped the foreclosure packet. They're moving faster than their paperwork. That sentence stayed with me as she drafted 2 letters. The first demanded immediate preservation of every HOA record relating to my property, including emails, board minutes, inspection reports, contractor instructions, GIS maps, and communications with Summit Property Services. The second informed the HOA that all future communications must go through counsel. She handed me copies. We're not accusing anyone yet. We're making sure nothing disappears. Exactly. Late the next morning, Rachel and I drove to the management office together. Diane Whitmore was already waiting. She greeted Rachel with the practiced smile of someone convinced she understood every room before entering it. I wasn't expecting attorneys this early. Rachel smiled politely. My client asked me to observe. Observe what? Whatever today's meeting becomes. The conference room smelled faintly of fresh coffee and expensive furniture polish. A digital recorder sat in the middle of the table. Diane reached over and pressed the record button herself to ensure accuracy. Rachel didn't object. Neither did I. The board's secretary began reading through prepared resolutions, delinquent assessments, protective management, authority to maintain common standards. Everything sounded organized, professional, until Diane slid a final document across the table. We'll need acknowledgement that the association currently exercises management authority over the improvements. Rachel glanced at me before asking quietly, "Based on which parcel?" Diane answered without hesitation, "The Caldwell cabin parcel." Rachel pushed the paper back. I asked which parcel designation. For the first time all morning, Diane looked mildly annoyed. She opened her binder, flipped 2 pages, then read aloud, "Parcel 18B." I kept my face perfectly still. The board secretary typed every word into the meeting minutes. The digital recorder continued blinking red. Rachel asked another calm question. "And that's the parcel your contractors improved when they installed the access barrier?" "Correct." "The same parcel referenced throughout your management actions?" "Yes." No hesitation. No uncertainty. She believed every word. Rachel simply nodded. No further questions. The rest of the meeting ended almost anticlimactically. Board members approved routine motions, maintenance budgets, landscaping contracts. Then Diane signed the authorization extending protective management through the foreclosure sale. The secretary notarized her signature. Copies were distributed around the table. Nobody realized they had just multiplied the number of documents preserving the same parcel designation. Outside, Diane caught up with us beside the parking lot. "You know," she said pleasantly, "most people would have saved themselves a lot of money by paying their assessments." Rachel answered before I could. "Sometimes paying the wrong bill creates a much larger problem." Diane laughed. "I don't think so." She climbed into her SUV and drove away without looking back. Rachel waited until the taillights disappeared around the corner. Then she tucked the meeting agenda, certified minutes request, and preservation letters into her briefcase. "They're committed now," she said. "Committed to what?" She looked toward the mountains where my cabin sat beyond the trees. "The same parcel number. The same county. The same chain of authority." She closed the briefcase with a soft click. "They can't quietly correct it anymore." For the first time since I found that foreclosure notice on my porch, I wasn't hoping they would make another mistake. They had just chosen to preserve the one that mattered. The hearing wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Too quiet for everything that had brought us there. Judge Thomas Avery sat at the bench reviewing a stack of binders while the soft hum of the courtroom air conditioner blended with the rustle of legal paper. The room smelled faintly of old oak, printer toner, and stale coffee. Diane Whitmore sat across the aisle wearing the same navy suit she'd worn to the board meeting. Calm, composed, certain. She still believed this was a collections case. Rachel knew better. So did I? The judge looked toward Diane's attorney. "Your client maintains the association properly recorded its lien?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And every subsequent foreclosure action relied upon that recording?" "Correct." Rachel didn't even look at me. She simply stood. "Your Honor, before addressing foreclosure, we'd like the court to verify one foundational fact." Judge Avery nodded. "The property description?" "No." Rachel slid 2 certified county maps onto the evidence display. The recording jurisdiction. Lucas Bennett, the county recorder's deputy, stepped into the witness box exactly as scheduled. No surprise witness. No last-minute discovery. Just the same public official whose certified records we'd requested weeks earlier. Rachel handed him the foreclosure packet. "Mr. Bennett, where was this lien recorded?" He read the document. "Redstone County." "And where is Mr. Caldwell's cabin legally located?" He turned toward the certified GIS overlay. "Black Ridge County." Rachel handed him Grandpa's original recorded survey. Then the certified parcel index. Then the deed. Each document carried the county seal. Each one said the same thing. "Black Ridge County." Rachel spoke quietly. "Can real property located in Black Ridge County be perfected by recording a lien solely in Redstone County?" "No." "Why not?" "The recording system follows the property's legal location. No speeches. No drama. Just procedure." Across the courtroom, Diane leaned toward her attorney for the first time all morning. He whispered something back. Neither looked comfortable anymore. Rachel continued. "Mr. Bennett, did your office ever receive this HOA lien?" "No." "Did your office ever index this foreclosure against Mr. Caldwell's parcel?" "No." "Would a title search conducted in Black Ridge County reveal this lien?" "No." Rachel thanked him and sat down. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. Diane's attorney rose quickly. The wrong county designation was merely clerical. Rachel stood again before the judge could respond. "Then we'd ask to admit defendant's board meeting recording, certified minutes, preservation correspondence, contractor authorization, inspection notices, and management orders. Every document appeared on the courtroom screens. Every one after another. Parcel 18B, Redstone County. Parcel 18B, Redstone County. The inspection notice. The contractor work order. The access barrier. The protective management resolution. The notarized board authorization. Even Diane's own recorded voice from the meeting. Asterisk correct. Asterisk asterisk parcel 18B. Asterisk asterisk yes. Asterisk not once. Repeatedly. Judge Avery removed his glasses. So after receiving notice from counsel questioning jurisdiction, Rachel nodded. The association reaffirmed the same parcel designation under recorded meeting procedures. The judge turned toward Diane. Mrs. Whitmore, did the board verify the property's legal county before continuing foreclosure? Her confidence cracked for the first time. We relied on our management records. The question was not what you relied upon. His voice remained perfectly even. It was whether you verified. She hesitated. No. Her attorney tried once more. The association accepted maintenance payments for years. I finally took the witness stand. Rachel handed me the old county engineer's letter Megan had scanned from Grandpa's estate binder. The same letter I'd nearly forgotten. I recognized the signature immediately. The judge read the highlighted paragraph aloud. Asterisk, participation in shared road maintenance shall not alter ownership, parcel jurisdiction, or association authority. Asterisk road invoices. Newsletter request. Survey coordinates. Pink ribbons. Parcel 18B. The chain across my driveway. Every strange detail that had seemed disconnected now fit together without Rachel saying another word. The HOA hadn't foreclosed on the wrong owner. They had built their entire foreclosure on the wrong county, the wrong parcel, and an assumption that road maintenance meant membership. Judge Avery closed the evidence binder. The court finds substantial defects in the recorded lien and every enforcement action derived from it. He looked directly at both attorneys. Effective immediately, the scheduled foreclosure sale is stayed pending final order. The court further directs that no additional management actions, inspections, access restrictions, or transfers occur until jurisdiction and title issues are formally resolved. The gavel struck once. Not hard. It didn't need to. For the first time since that yellow notice appeared on my porch, the law, not the HOA, was in control of my cabin. The stay order reached the HOA before Diane made it back from the courthouse. By the time Rachel and I returned to the mountain, the orange barricades were still standing, but no one was guarding them. Summit Property Services had received written instructions to stop all work, preserve its records, and remove nothing until the court completed its review. The chain across my parking area remained locked. For 3 more days, I walked the old footpath carrying groceries and tools uphill by hand. The steel links still rattled in the wind, but the sound had changed. It no longer felt like a warning. It sounded temporary. Judge Avery's final order came the following week. The lien was void. Not reduced. Not amended. Not transferred. Void. It had been recorded in Redstone County against Parcel 18B, a vacant subdivision lot nearly a mile from my cabin. Because Black Ridge County had never received or indexed a valid lien against my property, the HOA had no legal foundation to foreclose, restrict access, inventory the cabin, or claim management authority. The auction was canceled permanently. The cloud on my title was removed. The HOA was ordered to pay my attorney fees and restore the property to its prior condition. That afternoon, the same supervisor who had arrived carrying the inspection clipboard returned with a cutting wheel. He looked embarrassed. I was following the work order, he said. I know. The motor screamed against the steel chain. Sparks scattered over the gravel like orange fireflies. Seconds later, the links dropped with a heavy metallic crash. His crew pulled the posts from the concrete, removed the unauthorized signs, and patched the holes beside my driveway. They left my blue stakes untouched. The pink survey ribbons disappeared into an evidence bag requested by the HOA's insurer. The insurer's investigation moved faster once it reviewed Diane's recorded board meeting. Her repeated statements tying my cabin to Parcel 18B destroyed the argument that the problem was a single clerical error. Emails showed the management company had raised concerns about the conflicting county information before the foreclosure notices were posted. Diane had ordered them to proceed anyway. She resigned before the next board meeting. The board's attorney resigned 2 days later, and Summit terminated its HOA contract after determining its crews had been sent onto the wrong property under defective authorization. No one went to prison. No one lost a mansion. They faced the consequences their actions actually earned. The insurer paid for the damaged cedar trim, the access restoration, my documented expenses, and a settlement for the wrongful foreclosure attempt. The HOA adopted a rule requiring an independent title search before any future property lien. Road maintenance payments could no longer be treated as proof of membership. The county corrected the digital parcel layer that had placed my cabin against the wrong jurisdictional boundary. Megan came up the first weekend after the settlement. She brought Grandpa's estate binder in a new fireproof case and set it on the oak table. "You keeping it here?" "Copies," I said. "The originals stay in the box." She smiled. "You finally learned caution." Grandpa called it measuring twice. Together we rehung his survey beside the fireplace. Below it, I placed the old county engineer's letter stating that road payments changed neither ownership nor HOA authority. Outside, 2 neighbors stopped near the bulletin board. The auction flyer was gone. In its place hung a plain board notice acknowledging that my cabin was not part of Pine Hollow Ridge Estates. No accusations. No clever language. Just the corrected boundary and a formal apology approved by the new board. Near sunset, I stepped onto the porch. The mountain air smelled of wet pine and cold stone. Water moved below the ridge, steady and unseen. Behind me, the repaired cedar trim showed a pale scar where the foreclosure notice had been stapled through Grandpa's wood. I left the scar visible. Then I drove my truck up the gravel spur and parked beside my own front door. The tires crunched over the road I had paid to maintain, past the boundary they had tried to erase, toward the cabin they had never owned.